Hey, it is Friday, May 31st, 2019, and this is the Pro and Con Show, and I'm your host, Michael James Ott. Welcome to the show. I have family things going on here right at the dinner hour, 6 p.m. 6 p.m. on a Friday, so I'm actually doing the show a little bit early. I apologize to anyone that tunes in and finds that the video's already in the can, if you will. But just want to touch on the news. Again, we're focusing on the who, the what, the where, and the when, and trying to leave behind the rhetoric and opinion and analysis, and form our own opinions. And so, looking at some left-leaning websites, and then NPR, National Public Radio, kind of being the center. And then some right-leaning things like from Fox News and Breitbart, which are somewhat right-leaning. And just a word about these things. Of course, what I find is that some of the coverage is more biased than others. There are certain people on Breitbart, for example, certain columnists that definitely are much more willing to put a very strong so-called conservative or Republican kind of spin. Same thing in Huffington Post and CNN and so on. And then there are others that are actually less bent on pushing their own agenda and more appropriately treating the subjects. But the whole idea is that you're going to look at the spectrum of what these people are saying. You're going to take some extra time, just like I'm doing, and you're going to get both sides of the story: the pro, the con, the good, the bad, the for and against. And you're also going to be looking at how they're presenting this information. So I'm just going to start with NPR today, and the lead story on NPR is the Missouri abortion clinic. There's only one of them in Missouri, and they had a change in legislation there, and in theory, that was going to put that lone abortion clinic in Missouri out of business because of the new regulations around it. But there's a judge that has granted the clinic's request, at least for a temporary restraining order. So that's going on. If you look back a week or two in some of these videos, some of these programs that I've made, we did a 4-part series on abortion and talked more about it in terms of a more holistic approach, where we talk about pre-pregnancy, pregnancy, and post-pregnancy care. And the conclusion that I have come to, again, trying to balance the needs of, well, number one, I'm a man, so it's unfair for me to be putting upon women. This is a big thing that they obviously, women, I can't get pregnant, women can, and but on the whole, and again, go back and look at the 4 videos on abortion. It feels to me that we can get to a place where everyone would be much happier, and to me, that seems to be a place where abortions are legal and they are safe. And for those who struggle with affording them, they can be made affordable, but then they're also very rare. And again, go back and look at the 4 videos to see why that is. But it feels to me like, again, we're as a society, we're too focused on just a single aspect of this, and we should back up and try to address all the issues that women face around that pregnancy, and what happens before pregnancy, during pregnancy, and after pregnancy, and so on. But anyway, so that's the top story. Then there's an interesting story, and I saw it reported on a couple of these websites. So Representative Ocasio-Cortez, she tweeted out that she wanted to introduce some legislation that would block former Congress members from lobbying later in their careers. And Senator Cruz, amazingly enough, these two people are normally at war, frankly, verbal war. He tweeted out in response, actually, I agree. And so they have vowed to work together. We'll see what happens there, but it's interesting that, and this is true in a lot of cases. There's a lot of things where the wrong people are having influence on our government, and you and I are allowing that to occur. And the representatives, at least some of them, even though they're on polar opposites of the normal political spectrum, they recognize this too, and perhaps they'll actually do something about it. Let's hope that they do. Let's see here, and then there's a group privately funding some border wall activity down in New Mexico. I guess it's a little bit northwest of El Paso, Texas. So I think there was a temporary injunction to stop them from building some of the border wall on this private land because the permits were incorrect or something like that. But anyway, there's a section of this wall, I think, again, if I read this correctly, it's northwest of El Paso, Texas, in New Mexico, on private property, and they built some border wall structure, basically. So that's all, reported, again, mostly without bias. So then I look at CNN, and some of their top stories include and actually they changed, it's amazing, they changed these headlines here. So one of the headlines that was on here just a moment ago said Trump top aides strongly recommended against tariffs against Mexico. So today, Mr. Trump announced that he's going to start putting some tariffs on products coming out of Mexico unless the Mexican government starts intervening with the people coming up and trying to come across their border. And so he's trying to put pressure on them. And there's a lot of reasons why that might be, some reasons why that might be a good reason, a good idea. There's a bunch of reasons why that might not be a good idea. But anyway, now the headline has changed to Trump overruled top economic advisors on Mexico tariffs. And then, of course, they're still focused on some of the potential wrongdoing by the Trump campaign and the Trump administration. So there's a top headline, voicemail, this is on CNN, voicemail from Trump lawyer could show possible obstruction. So let's go to Huffington Post. So there's another part here that Laura Ingraham from Fox News, she can be a very, somewhat of a very polarizing person based on the information I've seen over time. And she did a story where she was talking about censorship, and that's some of the social sites like Facebook and Twitter and so on, where we're doing things, Instagram, we're doing things to limit the amount of materials that could be published by some people that they felt were strongly advocating violence and oppression and supremacy and stuff like that. So my and I didn't watch her story or anything like that. There's two sides to this, and the pro and the con, the good and the bad, the for and against. Okay, it's always true, always true. So the one side of it is you have these private companies that are essentially deciding rules around censorship. And also the other thing that's going on in parallel with this is there are certain industries that are boycotting, for example, the state of Georgia, because the state of Georgia has passed fairly strict abortion laws recently. And there's a lot of people that don't agree with that. And so some of these leaders of industries are talking about boycotting the state of Georgia, like, some of the companies that do filming in Georgia, for example. So, yeah, so it's this is a really interesting thing because you can have these super PACs, and basically at some point they declared that corporations were individuals and were free to express their First Amendment rights by spending money on whatever it was that they wanted to spend on. And so anyway, the bottom line is she was doing a story about censorship. But also that censorship then is against people that were generally inciting behaviors or attempting to incite behaviors that a significant portion of the U.S. public would say is wrong. So the interesting thing here is that to the extent that this rhetoric can have influence on people and actually cause them to become violent when they would not do so otherwise, who decides that? And recently I've seen some discussion about, it's some of these hate-mongering people should probably be censored, but the question is who determines that and what are the rules, and there's kind of a feeling that it probably should not be a private industry. And so it all comes down to we'd get rid of a ton of this if we just got rid of the political parties and just had people selected, randomly pulled from the population and then screened by the rest of us, and then elected into office. Get rid of all the money, get rid of all the partisan kinds of stuff, and just work on the issues, try to resolve them to the best of your ability. But anyway, so here's the Huffington Post, which of course is going to turn up the rhetoric knob in a big way. It's also an interesting story that Kim Jong-un, North Korean dictator, potentially, these stories are not confirmed, but they're trying hard to confirm them. They've come from a few different sources that he's been killing and imprisoning some of the negotiating team that failed to come to an agreement with Mr. Trump over the last handful of months. And I think that we in this country, anyway, most of us, I would think the vast majority of us would find this to be kind of appalling behavior. But and then one last thing before I sign off for today. So on Breitbart, and again, it's this detection of bias and the rhetoric. So here's Elizabeth Warren was on a radio show, and the commentators on that show were jabbing her about some of her early claims that she was part American Indian. And so they asked her several questions about that, and they wouldn't let her just like pivot and switch to something else. So they kind of pinged on her some about that. And of course, Breitbart, Pocahontas. So you know, Mr. Trump calls her Pocahontas, and all of that, Pocahontas. It's all intended to energize hate and discontent amongst people. So who, what, where, and when. If you're interested in that, just go and watch. They have a video of her. Just watch the video. But this whole thing with Pocahontas, and and then showing these pictures of her, kind of looking like she's crazy. Well, there you go. That it's an illustration. A picture says 1,000 words, and anybody, me included, if you were to stop frame me at any point, you're probably going to catch me with my eyes open or closed or some strange expression on my face. And if you just catch the right frame, well, there you go. You can have whatever facial expression you want, and it's all wrong and inappropriate. So remember, focus on who, what, where, and when. Leave all the rhetoric behind. Form your own opinions. All right, so this is the Pro and Con show for Friday, May 31st. Thanks for tuning in. I hope the discussion is a benefit for you. I hope you will talk to your neighbors and friends and coworkers and try to come together, listen as much as you talk. And let's do a better job of being the good neighbors that we are. All right. Bye for now.